Swedish beers. This is my top 5 beers brewed in Sweden. Oh man, I can't wear this. I'm not a cap guy. I just bought it as a gimmick. So these beers are not the most sold in Sweden. For that you have to go to the cheapest pale macro lagers. But they are sold enough to be warranted a spot in the permanent supply at Systembolaget. So all of these beers, except for the Nils Oskar, I think, you can walk into any Systembolaget store here in Sweden and find them on the shelf. The Nils Oskar is sold in just a few of the stores, but you can easily order it online. So this is of course my personal, very subjective list, and to qualify for my top 5, it has to be beers that I return to over and over again. Sweden is a fantastic craft beer country, but some beers are limited edition, others are expensive, and some of them maybe you want to drink only once a year because it's such an intense experience. These are beers I want to have in my fridge at all times. So I will show you one Pilsner, one unfiltered lager, one New England styled IPA, one soft West Coast-ish American styled ale, and one English styled IPA. So this first one is maybe the most controversial of my choices. There are a ton of great craft beer lagers in Sweden, and then I go for a mass-produced one. But I think this is an example of smaller isn't always better. This one is called Melleruds Utmärkta Pilsner, the excellent Pilsner of Mellerud. And it's a sub-brand to Spendrups, one of the largest producers in Sweden. They also make other types of beverages. Mellerud is a small town, mostly known for the saying "Hårda bud i Mellerud." Hårda bud means kind of tough shit. Something is harder than you thought, or you have an unexpected setback. So the story goes, there was this soccer team that was visiting Mellerud to play against the local team there. And they were confident in victory, but then they unexpectedly lost. And on the way home, one of the players said, "Hårda bud i Mellerud." Of course, in Swedish it also rhymes, so it sounds funny. Now, there actually was a brewery in Mellerud, but it has been closed since long. But the brewmaster at Spendrups kind of picked up the idea of brewing beer in this old Swedish style. So they borrowed, or I guess bought, the Mellerud brand and now makes beer in that old style. Not in Mellerud though, but in Spendrups' main brewery, which actually was located not far from where I live, south of Stockholm. But they moved it a few years ago, and now they are tearing down the few of the remains. Classic Pilsner aroma. Oranges, lemon, grassy bitterness, some sort of breakfast porridge. Skål! This is lovely, and it's mostly the aftertaste that makes me love this beer. It has both the sweetness and the hop sting that I love about Czech Pilsners. It starts out fruity and sweet, and then after a while you get all the malt and a slightly more dry finish. Yeah, it's really addicting. It would be interesting though to make a comparison between all the other great lagers in Sweden. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Next up, Nils Oskar. And if you have ever seen a Swedish beer being reviewed online, it probably was Nils Oskar God Lager because of the funny name. Of course, in Swedish it's God Lager, which means good lager, tasty lager. This is the unfiltered version, and I think they have changed the recipe as well, because the regular one is dry and bitter. It's very good. But this one has lower bitterness and just lighter overall. Nils Oskar is one of the oldest craft beer breweries in Sweden. They used to be located in Stockholm, but they moved south a few miles to Nyköping. That's often what happens when you are expanding. You need a bigger place and lower rent. Then you move out of the big city. Let's give it a go with all this foam. This is super refreshing. Perfect for a hot summer day. There is a little bit of a drier malt finish, but not at all in the same way as the previous Melleruds Pilsner. It's pretty citrusy, which contributes to the refreshness, and it's just so creamy. So this works best just as it is, or maybe with very spicy food. Next up, Stigberget's West Coast, or Måsen as it's sometimes called in Gothenburg, the seagull. Now this is an interesting one. It's called West Coast, so how do you think it looks when I pour it up? Huh? You didn't expect that, did you? So it's not a West Coast styled IPA, it's a New England styled IPA. And I think there are two reasons for that. The first one is that when they brewed this beer the first time, back in 2015 or something like that, they actually made a West Coast styled IPA. And then they later changed the recipe to become more of this style, the New England style. Pineapple, mango, something sausage-like. I usually say salami, oranges, skål. Grapefruit as well. It's pretty oaty. I think there is added oat. Yes, plus wheat. So it's super creamy. The other reason for the name West Coast is that it is being brewed in the city Gothenburg, which is on the west coast of Sweden. And people in Gothenburg are proud of their coast, which is kind of open to the rest of the world. And then the capital of Sweden, Stockholm, is on the east coast. And there you only have the Baltic Sea. So you sometimes say the west coast is the best coast. And Gothenburg is the front of Sweden, and Stockholm is the backside of Sweden. It's kind of a friendly or not so friendly rivalry between those cities. So West Coast is kind of an identity as well. There is maybe a little bit sharper bitterness than it usually is in this style. It has this kind of not minty but dank bitterness. But in my opinion, it just makes the beer more enjoyable. Beautiful. There are other excellent New England-styled IPAs in Sweden, and it would be fun to make a comparison between those as well. Next up, the latest addition to my top 5, Norn from Oppigårds. I had another ale from Oppigårds in my top 5 before, Amarillo, but then I got the recommendation from a friend, and now this one took its place. This is an American-styled pale ale, or a very soft West Coast IPA, you might say. Some soft tropical notes, mango, orange, also that salami again. And you can sense that piney bitterness. Low malt body, but it's there. This is kind of my limit when it comes to West Coast IPAs. I can't really relax with that amount of high bitterness. This is more toned down and soft. It kind of reminds me of the IPAs in the beginning of the millennium. Of course, I can't pinpoint exactly what they tasted like back then, but I remember these notes. So I became a regular at the restaurant in Gothenburg, where I lived at the time. Now I live in Stockholm, so I moved from coast to coast. The owners were from England somewhere, and because I often ordered the same thing, one night when I first came there, they said to me, IPA, and I went, I'm sorry? IPA? No worries, mate. And they got my beer, and afterwards I understood. Oh, IPA, India Pale Ale. That wasn't really a thing back then. It was kind of new, at least in Sweden. I wonder, because the owners were British, if the IPAs came from England. As I remember it, it was more like an American-styled IPA. Oppigårds, also one of the oldest craft beers breweries in Sweden, are located in Dalarna, northwest of Stockholm. Dalarna is maybe the county in Sweden where they have the most melodic accent. Dalarna! Last but not least, Jämtlands IPA from Jämtlands Bryggeri. Jämtlands Bryggeri is situated in the north of Sweden. Or actually, if you look at the map, it's right in the middle. But because many of the biggest cities are located south in Sweden, it kind of feels further north than it actually is. Jämtlands might actually be the oldest craft beer brewery in Sweden. I'm not sure. It was founded in 95. I think they brewed their first beer in 1996. Lovely color. So this is an English-styled IPA. You get the syrup, the figs, some dark chocolate notes. Smells lovely. Skål! This is extremely tasty. I know they had an English brewmaster, and I think he also returned a few years ago again. And of course, I'm not an expert, but people say it's very hard to brew in this English style in Sweden, unless you are an Englishman, of course. So this reminds me of ESB. I think that beer has similar flavors. Those two beers would actually be interesting to try side by side. Click into this playlist for more Swedish beers and let me know in the comments if there is a particular beer you would like to see on the channel. And remember, drink responsibly.